Greeting and salutations. This is BIGJXXX. I was watching Romanov V, Roman V, the guy from Romania, who's find very strange talking about American politics while he's injecting his right wing talking points about Americans and Western world politics and societies. And what was leaked was a the mayor of Philadelphia leaked out who is the nominee for the vice presidency of the United States, um, and that is Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. I gotta say, and let me say though, it's supposed to be announced on Tuesday. It's supposed to be announced on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, that who will be the nominee for the vice presidency to be Kamala Harris's Vice President Harris's running mate. Whether that's true or not is going to be Josh Shapiro. Well, if I'm proven wrong, be proven wrong. But for right now, based on what it was leaked by the mayor Parker from the city of Philadelphia, it's Josh Shapiro. Ever since I want to say 1964, Democrats always pick the wrong person to be vice president. I can understand, I got. Let me talk about Democratic politics because, and I might sound. Excuse me if I sound contradictory. Excuse me if I sound contradictory or I'm sound hypocritical because I'm reading and I'm discussing the pros and the cons of each candidate who was on the short list for the vice presidency this coming year. So there are a lot of pros and a lot of cons when it comes to Josh Shapiro. But back to what I was saying earlier. Since 1964, 1968, the Democrats have always picked the wrong person to lead, or should I say, to be part of a presidential ticket as the vice president. Hubert Humphrey picked a person from Maine you know, who couldn't draw a electoral votes from states that he really needed. 1972, you have George McGovern who picked a person who he should have kept, but since the person was found out to have deep depression and was having shock therapy at a psychologist and was replaced by a Kennedy, a family member from the Kennedy clan, he lost. Then Mondale won under Jimmy Carter. Whatever. But when Mondale picked, I forgot her name. I forgot her name now from 1984. Um, Mafrado. Sorry, it's an Italian name. I forgot her name. You know, he picked. A liberal picking another liberal from who's from a northern state, picking another person from another northern state. Geraldine Ferraro. Think that's the name. That's the name I was referring to. Then Michael Dukakis picked Texas Senator. Oh my God, nothing. Well, I don't remember all these names, y'all. But the thing is, Al Gore picked Joe Lieberman when Al Gore should have picked somebody from Florida or somebody from the South to sure up, and that should have been that was a fatal mistake when it comes to Al Gore. When Al Gore picked Joe Lieberman over Senator Graham, and Senator Graham was from Florida, who would know how history would have turned out if he picked, if he had picked Senator Graham over Joe Lieberman. And yes, my disappointment that I had in Obama picking Joe Biden. Obama, and my disappointment when it comes to President Obama, or then Senator Obama at the time, is that you can't call yourself an agent of change and then reach back to the elites and pick a lot of people who were servant of the elites. Case in point, when it comes to Obama, I know I'm going a long way with this, so bear with me on this. Obama, who's a agent of change after seeing the Iraq War and how the elite members of the Democratic Party and those neocons from the Republican Party has been tearing this country apart. Instead of picking a person like around his age, like Evan Bayh out of Indiana, which is a conservative state. By the way, he could have picked up Indiana very quickly and prevent the rise of Mike Pence. But let me just keep going on, right? This might bore you a bit. But anyway, the thing is, right, when it comes to Joe Biden, right, Biden picked a person in Kamala Harris, solely for the fact of her gender and the racial, ethnic makeup of her. And her coming from a state like California, which is not going to pull not one needle, move one needle in defeating Donald Trump. The only reason why Donald Trump was defeated was because Donald Trump defeated himself. Let me say this again. The only reason why Donald Trump lost, yes. The only reason why Donald Trump lost the 2020 election was because of Donald Trump himself and only himself. So for you Trump supporters who got a problem, too bad. And the thing is, a part of me hope that Donald Trump does lose. Just to remind y'all that he's not a god, he's not a deity to be worshipped. I'm really getting tired of you Trump supporters with y'all's racism, sexism, any other type of isms that y'all try. And no, don't, and no. Just because I said that, does that mean though the Democrats are off the hook for their racism and sexism and so forth? So let's drop that nonsense. So now it's 2024. Joe Biden dropped off the race in the middle of the election year. After he won all the primaries, after he was going to the convention, sold up with all the delegates. And now Miss Harris has options to pick. And her options to pick for a running mate is very, in my opinion, very unfair to her. She didn't have the months to think about who would gel with her, who would she like to have, committed who would she would like to have, let's just say, um, somebody that she would trust and feel comfortable with. I'll put it like that. Now, since it says it's Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, that is the weakest choice to make, and that's going to prove. And if I'm correct, it's not going to move not one needle. And I'm going to tell you why it's not going to move not one needle on the electoral college scheme. Now, like I said, I'm going to sound very hypocritical as I go on, because I'm looking at the pros and cons. Now, the pros of a Josh Shapiro. The pros of it is he's of a Jewish faith. His faith is conservative Judaism. He's a conservative Jew, and that might play well with the segment of the Democratic Party that has been loyal to the Democratic Party, but at the same time, this segment of the Democratic Party is also loyal to the Jewish state of Israel, and is in a backdrop with the war in, against Palestine and Hezbollah. And a lot of people here in America who are not of that certain religion have problems with the current prime minister of Israel and his administration and his warlike warlust in bombing Palestinians and bombing Lebanon, and now a certain assassination has happened in Iran, which might create a bigger conflict than what anybody wanted at this point. And also, the prime minister of Israel is under a lot of scrutiny and also a lot of criminal investigation about some money laundering. So that's to shore up the Jewish vote for the ticket. But at the same time, the negative side is that with Josh Shapiro becoming the vice presidential candidate, it also spells, the idea of winning Pennsylvania when the younger Democratic members are mostly people who are either not religious or they're of the Islamic faith, particularly in Wisconsin, the states of Wisconsin, the states of Minnesota, and other parts of the Midwest. A lot of those people are not going to vote. Donald Trump needed one county in Wisconsin to get those 14, 13 electoral college votes to be president in 2020, and that never happened. So the thing is now, so is Harris willing to sacrifice Wisconsin, which has 14 to 15 electoral votes, or Minnesota that has the same amount of electoral, which means though that's 29 to 30 electoral college votes to be lost? Is she willing to do that? Because that's really would be online if she picked Mr. Shapiro, Governor Shapiro. But if she's smart, right? I mean, if the Democrats were smart and they would have had a lot other options to put on the table. The governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, I believe he would be the best candidate at this point. Why? Because first of all, Andy Beshear represents the southern wing of the Democratic Party. The part of the Democratic Party that has been shut out since John Kerry was the candidate in 2004, since Obama's second run. The southern wing of the Democratic Party, which is a more conservative, more moderate wing, they need to be put back into the fold in order to defeat Trump or Trumpism. Even though Andy Beshear is not a what y'all consider a conservative, quote unquote, in the eyes of many conservatives, but he's more conservative within the Democratic Party. He's more on the right of Biden and Harris and those who are part of, and he would attract a lot of the middle class white men who are afraid of, or who could be afraid of, this wokeism that is permeating the government, academia, and let's just say entertainment. But if I was and then there was a guy named, I think the governor of Minnesota, I think his name is Watts. Minnesota, Wisconsin. I think y'all have a governor. I think the governor from Minnesota, Wards. The other candidate that they try to prop up, him. The only plus side, his plus side is also his negative side. He's too experienced. He's somebody that's been in government a long time. He's somebody who is a baby boomer. People are trying to get away from the baby boomer. Get away from the baby boomers from the White House. So why would anybody vote for a baby boomer for vice president who is in the same generation as Biden, almost, who's 10 years younger than Biden? And nobody wants to hear, where were you during the 1960s? Did like you serve? Nobody want to hear that same old malarkey about, every 4 years you had to worry about the 1960s, let me try to find his name. We don't want to hear nothing about the 1960s. Tim Walz from Wisconsin, who I'm referring to. Nobody wants to hear that anymore. All right. And then, I know I'm going to sound hypocritical. One candidate who I think would be a good match, even though he's about the same age as Tim Walz, and that would be Senator Mark Kelly out of Arizona. Now, I'm going to sound very hypocritical here, and some of y'all are not going to understand it. Senator Mark Kelly has something that no other vice presidential candidate this year have, or anybody who's running with the with the with the with the exception of JD Vance. See, Trump likes to Trump, and those who believe in the Trump ideology and Trumpism will like to call people communists, right-wing radio show hosts like your Sean Hannity's, like your Glenn Becks, your Joe Pags, would love to call any Democrat a communist. You can't tell that to Mark Kelly. You can't question one's patriotism. Why? You can't do that to Mr. Kelly. Well, Mr. Kelly has done something that's never been happened in a presidential ticket. And that is a person who is an astronaut for NASA. A person who was in the United States Navy, who served in the United States Navy for the past 30 years. Mark Kelly, who has a twin, who is the husband of then Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who was tragically, well, she's still here, by the way, who among others in that store was a target of a mass shooting. So the Trumpism, those who are the worshippers of Trumpism, will have a hard time to attack a Mark Kelly as a vice presidential candidate and as a president in his own right, if that happens. So he's probably the best candidate out of the finalists. You know, and nobody's gonna pick the governor of Illinois, JP. You know, nobody's gonna pick him, or Pete Buttigieg. And don't let me get started on Pete Buttigieg. Don't get me started on Pete Buttigieg. Now, a lot of people of the woke crowd wanted Pete Buttigieg to run, but there's a problem. There is a war on women, and I know this might sound offensive. And no, don't you come over here with the whole Big J. You're trying to be homophobic. Don't even try that. Don't even try that over here. I'm gonna tell you what was going to be seen if he is the candidate. So that there is a picture of him holding two babies on a hospital bed with his husband, and that's in the same backdrop when you saw when the administration that he is a part of. Remember, Pete Buttigieg is Secretary of Transportation along with Vice President Harris under Biden. So when they appointed, or Biden appointed Judge Jackson to be a part of the Supreme Court, and she avoided questions of what is a woman, and she could not identify a woman. And then you see that picture right there of him holding the baby and so forth. That's going to spell problems for certain women or certain people who see biologically born males in sports competing with their daughters. And that's going to be a problem. So he will be a terrible choice to be the vice presidential candidate. And he's asking to be, you know, asking him to be the vice president is very not going to give Kamala the way out to win in 2024. Now, if it's just me, right? If it was just me who was, if the Democratic Party would came to me and and she came to me, if Miss Harris, the Vice President Harris, would have came to me and asked, well, Big J, who would you think who you think should run with me? If she came to me and asked, I would have offered a couple names. And yes, it's going to sound very, very, very contradictory. One of my choices for VP for her would have been a black man by the name of Captain of the United States Navy, Malcolm Nance. I am a fan of Malcolm Nance. Malcolm Nance, who's from, who had been in the battlefield, Afghanistan, Iraq, who go back and forth between here in Ukraine, who witnessed the carnage. Donald Trump would have had a hard time. Donald Trump or even J.D. Vance would have had a hard time attacking or countering Malcolm Nance. Malcolm Nance would have won back at least some of the black male vote, because the black male vote is leaving the Democratic Party. And yes, I know somebody say with Big J, is that contradictory? Because Malcolm Nance is the same age as Mark Kelly, the same age as Governor Walz. Yes, but the thing is, Mr. Nance was a part of the United States Navy. Who's going to argue about patriotism on that plane? Now, another person who the other two individuals I would like to see to be the running mate, and that is Ambassador Joe Kennedy III. Well, Big J, what you talking about? Well, let me tell you what I'm talking about. Ambassador Kennedy would have been a better candidate than any of the finalists for this reason. First of all, he's a Kennedy, and the Kennedys are popular. Second, the Kennedy, him being VP, would have create a more dilemma for his uncle, Robert Kennedy, who is running for president as an independent candidate. And yes, all of the Kennedy family opposes, all if not most, opposes RFK Jr.'s run. And they still, and back then, I think it was back around April or May, they wanted Bobby Kennedy Jr. to drop out, and they said they still endorse Biden and Harris. And plus, though, on tip of that, that would draw in black male votes. Why? Because Joseph Kennedy III has advocated for reparations for the 500 years of slavery. And I think, and check the links on that, because he called for it years ago when he was a young 20-something-year-old congressman. Let me see, who else I would like to see. There's somebody else who I would like to see running. So yes, another candidate who I'd like to see is from the state of Georgia. Oh, and just like Joe Kennedy III, both of these men are millennials. And being a millennial, you would counter J.D. Vance, since J.D. Vance is a millennial himself. I would rather have Joe Ossoff, Senator Ossoff. I think I can't pronounce his name. Somebody help me pronounce his name right. Ossoff. He would be a candidate I would pick as a running mate if I was in the Harris campaign. I would advise that pick. Why? First of all, Biden and Harris needs Georgia to stay in the White House. If Harris wants to win, she needs Georgia to stay in the Democratic column. And Hasselhoff being a young Jewish male and millennial, white male and millennial, he would at least give the millennials, he would have gassed up the millennials to the point to go to the polls. Knowing his ins and out of social media like Twitter, even his YouTube page, if I'm not mistaken, he was on YouTube for a while. I hope I got that right. Let me see if we got that right. Yeah, he was on YouTube for a while, I believe. So he has ins and outs with TikTok. Yeah, I'm sorry. It wasn't YouTube. He was a major content creator on Instagram and TikTok. So he has massive appeals to the millennials and the Zoomers. That's who that's if somebody came to me, if somebody from the Harris campaign would ask me who I would like to see as vice president under her, I'll pick John Assoff or Captain Malcolm Nance, or someone like a Joe Kennedy. That's who I would like to see as a candidate. Now, as for right now, I know I'm about to go in. Now the negative for Josh Shapiro is a few days ago, Josh Shapiro has been named in a scandal the last couple of days. And here's a story from the ABC. It says ex-aide to Josh Shapiro allegedly invoked Pennsylvania governor's name in a threat left woman weeping. Now I want to read a little bit. I know I'm a little past my time here. Let me read a little bit of this. One-time aide to Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro left a woman weeping and in shock after threatening her on a phone call in 2018, according to an email and woman sent to lawmakers in 2023, 5 years after the alleged conversation. The former aide, Mike Verb, allegedly invoked Shapiro's name in the call, telling the woman, by the time he and Josh were done with me, I will be worse than nothing. The woman who requested her name not to be published in an interview with ABC News. You are not going to continue to be nothing by the time Josh and I get done with you, the woman quoted Verb. I think it's a Verb. Verbet, as saying, telling ABC News that she was left shaken by the way he freely referenced others in power. So anyway, there's another sexual harassment. Yeah, it says though. There is another issue with Josh Shapiro. After he said there is an unrelated sexual harassment complaint within the campaign, within Josh Shapiro's campaign in 2018, that $300,000 was spent, and sexual assault within the Shapiro campaign in 2022. That came out in 2023. yeah, so it looks like Shapiro may not be the best choice. And if Harris ignores all these new news articles about Josh Shapiro, then she's not equipped um, to run any campaign. She just delivered the election to Donald Trump. And that's what she's doing. If that's the case that she's doing. But anyway, like, share, subscribe. I know this is a long video, but I have to sit there and put everything into the context. And I know it's kind of sound contradictory what I'm saying, but I'm looking at it as in the eyes of how are the pros and cons of each vice presidential hopeful. See y'all in the next video when I'm going to talk about black conservatives. Let me say it again. Black conservatives and their silence on Republican run cities. Big J out.